Welcome, everybody, to another edition of CPG Insiders. I'm your host, Mark Young, with my co-host, Justin Gerard. Good morning, Justin.
Oh, good morning.
We're going to do something a little different today.
Oh, boy.
We're just going to have a conversation with a friend of ours who I'm going to explain to people is I'm going to say a serial entrepreneur. Somebody who's been a part of the CPG industry for years. And I think where we want to go with this conversation is life in the CPG world.
Yeah.
So let me start by introducing people. Our guest is Tony Guiliano. I keep thinking it's there. Tony Guiliano.
Many people do that, Mark.
Yep, I can imagine that. And he is from New York. He's not in New York anymore. We're not gonna disclose his location, but he is a New Yorker. At any rate, Tony has been with a number of brands. I'm going to let him get into it. And he's been CEO and marketing guy. And so, Tony, just start people off and kind of bring them up to speed on here's what I'm thinking. Did you, like when you were a kid living in the Bronx, living in New York, were you thinking, when I grow up, I want to be in CPG? I want to sell shampoo when I grow up. I mean, how did you get here?
Yeah, great story. No, I had no idea. All I knew was that I went to Catholic school, parochial school in the true sense of the word, when there was a nun and priest and
a yardstick.
Latin. You had to learn Latin, and you said the Pledge of Allegiance, and you were a patriot. And all you knew was you wanted to please the nuns. Okay, that was it. Nothing about CPG or anything else. My dad, being a blue collar worker, never graduated from high school, always told me, "I want you to be an accountant." And I said, "Dad, why an accountant?" He said, "Because my accountant, he's the general manager, he's the boss." So guess what? I started off in college becoming an accountant. I hated it. I said, "This is not for me." And then I had a
didn't
marketing.
like counting the beans. Huh?
This was not for me. So I took a marketing class, and I kind of liked it. I liked the instructor. I said, "Hey, that's pretty cool. Let me take another one." While I was working in a supermarket, and I'd be running across the Procter and Gamble salesperson. I'd be the Lever Brothers, the Dial salesperson. And I would ask them a question. I say, "Hey, what do you do for a living? This is pretty cool. You come in, you leave, you look good, you got a nice car, so on and so forth." And now I said, maybe I'll take even more marketing courses and do that. So what I did was I interviewed on campus for a marketing or a position with Procter and Gamble and Dial soap. The Procter and Gamble person said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Basically, and I said, "I want to go into marketing." He says, "Nah, you want to really be in sales. You want to be." I didn't know at that point in time, but it was very linear at Procter and Gamble. You were in a sales organization or you were in a marketing. You didn't cross paths. And basically said, "No, you really want." I go, "No, I want to go in marketing." And this happened like 3 times, and I didn't get the job. The Dial guy said, "Hey, you want to go into marketing? Well, we got a great program. We can pay for your MBA, and then you go into marketing." And I said, "Boy, I may be Italian, but I'm not dumb." And I said, "I can sing that. I can sing that tune." And they did. I carried the bag for Dial for about 2 years. Went to New York City University in Manhattan. Got my MBA, compliments of Dial. And within a month, I was promoted to their marketing department in Phoenix, Arizona. I thought maybe because I was a great salesperson. Nah, it had nothing to do with that. It was an acronym called MBA, and they had flipped the bill. So that got me into marketing. And I was all of a sudden I'm working in marketing with Dial and learning how brand management works from the bottom up. I mean, it was a classical, they didn't tell you, "Okay, here's your Dial soap brand. You run that." No, you were working with Nielsen books and the like, and you were meeting advertising agencies, but you couldn't open your mouth. You were there just to visit. And this went on for like a year, and then became assistant product manager, and moved through the ranks. So that got
So
me, to answer your question, Mark, that got me into marketing, kind of a very circuitous route. My dad, to the day he passed, never really understood what I did. When I say I'm a product manager, I'm a category, a group, I'm a director, he go, oh, that's good. How much money are you making? He didn't know. He still was disappointed I wasn't the foreman at an operation plant somewhere.
Tony, I'm going to tell you. So my entire family, my parents are gone now. They still didn't know what I did for money. Most of my existing relatives don't understand what I do for money. And it's funny because they understand my real estate business.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
have a real estate business. That part they get. Oh, you build apartments. Yep, I get that.
Yep.
There's wood involved. There's there's plumbing fixtures. We get that one. Because I grew up in a family of contractors.
Okay.
So if you weren't swinging a hammer and building something, you weren't doing anything of value. But the reality is, most people around us, and probably some of this even for Justin, don't really grasp what we do for a living. I remember my father coming in my office one day, and he's, so people are just paying you to talk on the phone to them? Is that what? Is that how you make money? They just talk on the phone and they pay for that? Well, yeah, that's kind of part of what we do here, Dad. People do pay to hear. They just pay for you to talk. Yeah, they kind of pay for me to talk. So,
That's funny. Yes, true. But funny.
so now you went from being in the big leagues. So we're talking P&G, as big as it gets. And then you went from there to entrepreneurial brands. And obviously some steps in between. What was the big startling difference for you when you went from being a category captain to begging for 3 inches of space on the shelf someplace?
Great question, and one of total trials and tribulations, because you hear about it, but you're never prepared for that. And just kind of as a way of background information, I when you guys were, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about some of these brand successes, and some of them I've worked on that weren't a brand success, but the brand successes I kind of gave thought to, and I said, hey, I'm going to call this a tale of two brands.
Mm.
And let
One,
me back up for a minute and tell people, he not only was at Procter and Gamble, he was at Schering Plough, he was at Menon Company. I mean, you were a category captain.
we sure were, and the lessons learned when you're a category captain, you think apply when you come back and say, and now I'm launching this new product, and they go, yeah, so what? You're not the Coppertone category captain
Right.
anymore.
You were Coppertone.
Right.
Coppertone doesn't walk in and beg for a shelf space. Coppertone walks in and puts a planogram in.
Well, and that's kind of what I wanted before you get into your story, Tony. If you could briefly explain to our listeners who may not know what does category captain mean? What does it mean, and kind of what is the tone of this conversation?
The category captain is one that you have the good fortune to manage the retailer shelf. And I do mean that in the truest sense of the word. In other words, you go in with uh, the buyer. They don't call them buyers anymore. They're category managers. And you go in with your proposal that says, look, here's your current planogram that, by the way, we put together last year. And here's the proposals or changes we recommend. By the way, a little self-serving, because guess who's going to get more of that shelf space this year than last year? And 9 out of 10 times, that buyer, that retailer, will just say, hey, great. We've made their life easier. They don't have to get involved in that. And they just take that proposal, and that's the new planogram. Unlike
So
when you're
when we
small
talk
guy.
about category captains, folks, think about brands like Kellogg, Post Cereal, Coke, Pepsi, Coppertone, like Tony had, Dial Soap. These are brands that are, Tide,
Right.
P&G. These are brands that are so big that when you go to Target and Walmart, they don't have one facing, they have 24 facings.
Right.
And to Mark's point, it was funny because whenever we went in, and again, when I was at Coppertone, believe it or not, and we're going back, the late 80s, my market research budget was $1 million. $1 million for market research. Nielsen guys
In
would
the
come in
80s.
In the 80s.
in the 80s, late 80s. We had Nielsen come in monthly to present to us with a whole team, and we had the books, and we did that. So what did we do? We then put together planograms for all major retail category captains for most of them, and said, okay, here's the share of we didn't tell them our share of market totally versus share of shelf. But what we did, we would, at that point in time, we would have about a 40% share of market, still significant, but it was not the 60% share of shelf that we put in at retail. We always had a significant, and again, that's 50% difference. And seldom did the retailer say, no, 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 you only have 40 share of market, so you get 40 share of shelf. No, we of course got prime real estate, okay, eye level, and a greater percent. And our biggest challenge was to introduce new products, line extensions at that point in time, not really innovative, just to get more shelf presence, as opposed to, hey, this is a great product, needs to legitimately get more shelf presence.
So let's stop there for a second. Tony just tipped something off that I want to point out. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Innovation.
Mm-hmm.
When you were in the big guys, what was innovation? A new scent, a new package, a larger size?
You hit it. It was all of the above, but primarily when I was there, the company had become so operationally driven that there was a senior vice president who just managed the lines in Memphis, Tennessee, is where we were vertically integrated. We produced our own bottles and everything else and produced. And the number one criteria at that point in time, that's when Coppertone had lost its way and it went from like a 60 market share to a 40
Oh, yeah, it was
market
huge.
share.
Oh, yeah.
It was just because of guys like Panama Jack, okay, Jack
Yeah.
Katz, entrepreneur, Ron Rice, Hawaiian Tropic, the Zinca guys, okay, who had bicycles with the colored zinc oxide. These
We
guys,
did Ocean Potion and NOAD.
Ocean, you got that, Ocean Potion, Gary over at Ocean Potion.
Yep.
Yep.
These guys
Gary was our client.
they were entrepreneurs in the true sense of the word. Coppertone was interested in how many more units can I put through that line. So to your point or question mark, innovation it was just don't screw around. When I was brought in, don't screw around with the brand. You keep that and just produce more. If you want to make the bottle size a little larger, go for it. But don't do what we had to do. And we had it then, and I was fortunate enough that they brought in a new president when they brought me in, who said, look, you can't live with this market share decline. We can't live with this. What do we need to do? And we went to basics. We then started to look at innovation, and we started to do things that the company did not. I'm telling you, it was very difficult because many times it was myself had to go to the president and say, here's why we need to do it. And of course, I had the research to prove it. But one of the things this year, I have to show you, this was the very first Water Babies bottle
Yep.
off the
Remember
line.
Water Babies.
Okay, we launched. Okay, the people at Sharing Plow, I'm still friends. Well, now it's not Sharing Plow. It's Merck and Bayer and so on and so forth. But to get the little girl and dog back and to put Coppertone in a pink package, first time Coppertone was not in a brown package, but a pink, took an act of God. But we did, and we provided innovation from the standpoint that at that time, sun care didn't have market segmentation. Everybody has it now. So in other words, we introduced a baby segment with Water Babies. We introduced a sport product and a kids product. Doesn't sound innovative now, but at that point in time, it was very innovative.
And this is where our listeners have the advantage because big ships turn slow. So where Gary over at Ocean Potion would literally call me up in the morning and say, I've got a new idea. Let's go make this. And he had his own plant, and he was out in the plant formulating something and getting ready to get it out. He could do that in a fraction of the time that you could do it over at Coppertone.
Well said. Well said. But then I was I was relatively young at the time. I was a whippersnapper. I was really energized because, hey, I'm running this brand. This is a big brand. It was a big
Right.
brand.
It's a big
My
job.
advertising budget was bigger than most brands' sales. That's how big. And it dates back to A. Plow. You'll appreciate this, guys. He was a true entrepreneur, A. Plow. Bought companies, bought doctor shows, bought Coppertone in 1957. But what he did was he was a genius, and I had the privilege of meeting him when he was like 95 years old, still going to the office. 95 years old, and
Cool.
I would talk to him and pick his brain and say, "How did you build this?" He said, "Well, very simple. I just advertised, advertised, advertised." And he put Coppertone on billboards. He put it in radio. He did all kinds of things that were now to you guys. That's what you know that better than anybody. But at that time, people didn't do that, and he instilled the brand messaging and mantra that you don't screw around with your advertising budget. I remember when I ran the brand that if our salespeople wanted to increase trade advertising or merchandising, we couldn't do that because the marketing portion of that, the advertising and the radio and the billboards and the like, if it weren't 65% of the total spend, you had to get approval. Believe it or not, I was then like a vice president, and I had to get approval to a committee to get that 65% to 64 because we wanted to introduce a new product and to give some slotting allowance. They hated or would never agree to slotting allowance because it took away from advertising or brand building.
And when you look at these big companies, whether it's Coppertone, Tide, P&G brands. I mean, one of the things about when you look at the history of P&G, Tony, you might know this. When you look at the history of P&G, it goes all the way back to the late 1800s. And it was a small company making ivory soap.
Yeah.
That was the brand. And they made the soap by mistake and realized the soap floated and realized that's an ad gimmick. We can sell people the idea that our soap's so light it floats.
Yeah.
Which literally happened by accident. When the Great Depression came, when it hit, what P&G did differently was P&G completely leaned into advertising during the Great Depression. Now, most people would say that's insanity. Why are you spending more money in a depression? They completely leaned in. And what happened was when we came out of the Depression, when the war hit and we came out of the Depression, P&G had now captured so much market share during the Depression that when the Depression ended, they held the market share and exploded in size. And this is one of the reasons why, Justin, you and I talk clients all the time. Economies go up and down, but your marketing shouldn't be going up and down.
Ever.
Because when the economy is going down, this is your opportunity to grab market share because your competitors are pulling back. You can grab market share. And like all economies, if it goes down, it's coming up. And when it comes back up, you own the market share.
Always buy low. Why would you? Everything, right? You always buy low.
Yeah, and the advertising is
Stop spending.
cheaper. You're getting more advertising for your dollar when the market's down. Not that the market's
Exactly.
down right now, but he just brought that point up. So when you see innovation in the consumer packaged goods business, Tony, where does it come from? Is the innovation really coming from the basement guys, the garage guys, the entrepreneurs, or is it coming from the Procter and Gamble's and the Sharing Plows?
Well, then when I was with Sharing Plow Coppertone, it was coming from the little guys. they were beating our pants in the pool decks. We would try to put Coppertone on the pool deck, and that was a big failure no matter how much money we'd spend, because the pool deck guys had all kinds of products that were attuned to people who were sun worshipers on the pool deck. So clearly the little guys were then more attuned to the dynamics, market behavior, changes, shifts in what was going on. And again, to your point earlier, Mark, that the guys like Gary and Ron Rice, they did what they felt was going to, and they had great instincts, by the way. I remember being at a bar with Ron Rice, and I say, how are you doing this stuff? And he said, you see what I've got? And I'm looking, because he invited me to one of his tanning contests, the shows he had, the Hawaiian Tropic Girls. Remember that? And I said,
Gary was just as crazy.
Yeah. I go, yeah, but I don't get it. He says, you know what? I talk to them, and I find out why are they buying this product, or why are they buying my product? How can I get them to buy more? And getting that, and then the next day I would tell my operations guy, now take this ingredient, a jojoba or whatever, and add it to the whatever else they were putting in, and now they have a new product. And guess what? That new product was in tune to what the youth was doing, and was success. We couldn't move. To your Mark comment about the ship, okay, we move slowly. Okay, so generally speaking, it took 2 seasons before we could launch a new product. These guys could launch it in the same season, and that's why we were getting our pants just beat.
Now, when did you make the jump to an entrepreneurial brand?
I made it when I got recruited by Blue Lizard, or then Crown Laboratories, back in, I guess it was 2004. And they were they launched a few years prior. They acquired Jeff Bedard, another entrepreneur, Mark, real extraordinaire. And he was in Australia, where the skin cancer is 3 out of 4 are diagnosed, with skin cancer. I mean, the numbers are startling. 2 out of 3 are diagnosed with skin cancer, he saw this product, Blue Lizard, and he said, "Hey, wait a minute! This product is working. Unlike other products, it's a physical barrier, which was a chemical-free product. Okay, didn't have homosalate, oxybenzone, and some of those chemicals. It had zinc oxide, titanium oxide, good stuff." And he said, "You know what?
Better stuff, actually.
Let me bring it to the States.
Better stuff for your health."
And he did in 2004. A few years later, I got the call, and he said, "Look, I want to take this to the next level. Right now, we sell primarily in derm offices." It was a derm brand. And I said, "Well, that's good." I said, "You sure you want to get to retail?" He said, "Yes, but let's change the way retail is done." And I said, "Let's talk about that a little bit more. Coppertone, everything's return exposure. So the retailer has no risk. That's the good news for the retailer. For Coppertone, not so good, because you had millions of dollars that could be returned at any one point in time." Okay.
So, folks, let me explain it to you very quickly. In certain categories, sun care is one of them. The manufacturer ships the store around February, March, and whatever hasn't sold by August or September, the manufacturer takes back. And in many cases, Walmart's much better about this, but Tony, you probably can speak to this. In a lot of cases, you guys didn't even see money for 90 to 120 days.
That's exactly right. Sometimes accounts, they're not around anymore. But Kmart, we didn't see it until the end of the season.
If ever.
They would bill us. We used to call that in the industry net never. Okay. Net never. That was Coppertone. So when Jeff and I talked about how we're going to take this to retail, we in fact said what we're going to do, we're going to leverage the derm story. Okay. We are in fact going to do a slow build. We're not just going to go out there and try to get it everywhere, like Walmart and some of those that you knew you had to pay slotting allowance. So we weren't going to. We were going to be really bullish. We were bold, I probably should say, and somewhat naive. No returns. We were going to, in fact, demand the terms of not never, net never, but in fact, we're going to get paid in net 30, 45 days, the latest,
Unheard of.
okay, in this industry. And in fact, we were going to just change the whole landscape of this is not a seasonal product, but it's an everyday product. Because guess what? You go to your dermatologist not on a seasonal basis, but you go on an everyday basis. So that was the tenets which we, in fact, went into this. And in fact, now to get back to what you asked about the whole mindset, I didn't have the Coppertone mentality didn't work. Okay.
That's going to ask you, what was the culture shock that happened?
Yeah.
And what happened when you all of a sudden realized I'm not Coppertone anymore and I'm standing in front of Walmart?
It was major. It was major. It was that again, we didn't do ECRMs at that time because it wasn't in what we were doing, or NACDS. Like Coppertone, we did all of those. Okay. What we did was the AAD, the American Academy of Dermatology show, and we went to pediatric shows. Okay, pediatricians, where we told the story of chemical free. Okay, we went to regional doctor shows where we spent a lot of time with education, telling the story, and in fact handing out samples. We probably did a better job than most doing this here in terms of where the sample would come out in the dermatologist's office.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was we took that concept and said, okay, let's in fact tell the retailer we will go to your pharmacies, okay, with this sampling technique, and in fact, in your particular geography, work told you what the derms were. We had the name, the database from the AADs, and in fact saying we will tell those derms to recommend that they go into CVS located in Boston, Massachusetts, in this particular area. That was the strategy it played. And the culture shock was that the buyer all of a sudden said, well, you know what? I hate to say this to you, but because I've got people coming in asking for this product and they can't find it. This is a true story with CVS. And Mark, you probably know who the buyer is. He's moved around a few times, but he was my buyer then. He, in fact, said, and I hated it because I get my stores constantly calling me about this Blue Lizard product. The derms not only said to buy it, but then when we tried, meaning the retail store operator said, don't worry about it. I've got Coppertone and I got all these others. They would walk out the store and not buy the competition product. But worse yet, the market basket hurt because they didn't just go into the CVS and buy and look for the Blue Lizard, but they would buy $12, $14, $15 worth of other RX,
Mm-hmm.
whatever OTC products. And that was our leverage, which we didn't know until the retailer told us. We started leveraging that. And I remember CVS guy saying, and I hate you guys for that, but I'm going to give you 4 placements, okay? They're bottom floor, bottom level, okay? Had no leverage, right? Because the Coppertone guy was doing a planogram, so he had to tell the Coppertone guy, put Guiliano on the bottom 4, okay? And year round. Who got year round? And guess what? We got paid, believe it or not, net 30. So
I remember being
we
with a
changed the
buyer.
landscape with that particular account.
That's wild.
I remember doing I was at a buyer meeting, and the buyer was literally angry because she knew she had to buy our product.
There you go.
Because she didn't really want to cut it in, didn't want to bring it in. But I remember explaining to her, but there's a store right across the street that has it. And when you don't, our customer's going to go across the street to get it.
Right. Right. Well put. And those things work. Again, you didn't have, getting back to your question, you didn't have the leverage of being the big boy anymore. You didn't have the category captain um, uh, leverage. You had to be smarter, more nimble. You had to be able to say, look at these sampling devices I could do. And it worked because people, and you guys know better than anybody else, that when the consumer, who's king, goes into the store and asks for a product, can't find it, and then the buyer gets the word, they don't want to be bothered with these phone calls. And
And
they
it
were
doesn't
getting a
take that
lot of
many
phone
of
calls.
those. And it doesn't take that many of those to get attention.
All right?
Um,
Exactly right. Now, Walgreens
so
was a different situation. Once we were able to get into CVS, and my rep and I went into Walgreens, Walgreens took the position again. Again, the category captain then was Coppertone, and they were happy. He didn't want to be bullish or what have you. He knew and heard of us, but for whatever reason said, not really interested. So we took a different approach. I was living down in Florida at the time, and Florida has, as you well know, a lot of Walgreens. Okay, that was
mhm.
before CVS bought Eckerd's and took over the Eckerd. So Walgreens owned the Florida market, had about, I think, somewhere around 1,200 Walgreens everywhere. That's only in Florida, 1,200 Walgreens. So what we did was we took advantage of the autonomous regional manager structure in Florida, went to the office, Florida office in Orlando, Florida for Walgreens, went in, told our story, and said, look, and we were very candid, headquarters has not approved it, but guess what? We are going to be in CVS's, and you're starting to see CVS's spring out because they had just bought Eckerd's, and they're going to be selling, to your point, Mark, of right across the street. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do all of these, the DERMS programs and the recommendations, the endorsements, the sampling programs, and all of those grassroots marketing efforts, okay? And go to your pharmacy, and we promise you, of your 1,200, it was basically the 20/80 rule. We promised 500 Walgreens that we would, in fact, come with the sampling device that we did the dermatologist. And then the regional manager said, we're going for it. So we got into around of the 1,200, we got into 600, 700 Walgreens, and the rest was history. Because once we got in, I remember getting the phone call the next season. Got the buyer, there was a woman at that time, she was irate that we had done, she called it an end run. It wasn't
an
an end
end
run.
run. It's
You guys
exactly what
give
you
your
did.
region managers the ability, but now you're yelling at me. And then she says, now you come in and see me. And I said, okay. I said, but if you're going to yell at me, I'm not coming in. She's, no, you come in. And of course, we came in. It was a different tonality. And Walgreens then brought in the Blue Lizard line, and without, again, the return situation that, and terms that they didn't want to pay. So it changed that whole thing. And all of a sudden, as I started the conversation, unlike the Coppertone, which happened fast, immediate, their direct sales force made it happen, and all the merchandising and what have you. I'm talking over a 3-4 year period that we did this, and we went from virtually no retail distribution, sold only to Derm's office, to where we were 32,000 plus retail points with Blue Lizard, excluding, I might add, and it was by design, with due respect, Walmart, because we had taken the position at that point in time. We didn't want to make this a mass market brand. We wanted to go and focus on the drug pharmacy class of trade, okay? And we wanted to go after the independent drug wholesalers. Cardinal loved us because that was the sweet spot for this brand.
Mhm.
They would endorse this through their doctor outlets, which was good. 32 plus thousand distribution points, and we were well on our way toward establishing a brand new brand. Remember, I said 1998 to being the number one. Let me back up. Developing a new category segment, okay, which was a physical barrier, again, non-chemical segment, and being the number one chemical-free brand product in that particular segment, which pretty cool.
And this is the kind of stuff entrepreneurs can do.
Absolutely. And I was going to say this completely lines up with, for our listeners, the pathway that we talk about. We did a whole show on go-to-market strategy, and you just laid it out. Number one, you had innovation. Number two, you correctly selected the channels to start and scale. You started with one, and then you were able to expand. You also additionally had pent-up demand built up before you went to retail, so you ensured that you not only had a sales story, but you had clear proof of concept both from a product standpoint and from a sales standpoint. So when you went in to have those meetings, you walked in with leverage. You didn't walk in hand hoping, praying, right?
Yeah.
You walked in saying, you want this. If you don't take this, that's your loss, because we are already, this train has already left the tracks. So you're just mapping out exactly what we tell every one of our clients and every listener here, that if you do these steps, and these steps haven't changed, doesn't matter what market, doesn't matter what category, this plan, this approach is still the same today as it was back then.
Well said, Justin. Very, very well said. The only thing I'll add to that is, again, because getting more into, as Mark described, entrepreneurial. Coppertone realized when we were there later on that we couldn't beat some of these guys. So what did we do? We bought them. So we bought Band de Soleil, who was, a premier brand in that upscale market. We bought Zinca and had them come to our sales meeting riding bicycles and showing the zinc oxide. These guys were characters, but they owned the beach market with colored zinc oxide. We tried to buy Neutrogena. The guy, it was still family owned. He said to me, Tony, with due respect, pound salt. And we had Jack Katz from Panama Jack come into headquarters. I had dinner with him the night before and basically had him, he signed in, not signed, we had a handshake agreement, brought him in to meet the president of the division and all our key people. We were all wearing suits, okay? And I'll never forget this.
He showed up in a Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah. And guess what? He had sandals on too.
Yep.
I'm going, oh no, how could you do this? Worse yet, he reneged on the deal. He said, Tony, don't get angry, but with due respect, I thought about it last night, even though I agreed. He said, I cannot visualize guys with suits and ties walking on the beach with my product. And he said, no. And I go, you know what? I understand. Okay, we'll be friends. We didn't, so that didn't acquire. But I guess the strategy when you're bigger, you do those things to try to get around. And then when I was more entrepreneurial, using the Blue Lizard experience and grassroots were really, you Justin, you hit it right on the head. And what I want to add to that worked well, and I never knew how well this could have an impact. But one of the things we did was we tied in with cancer research centers, hospitals, Moffitt right here, okay, in Tampa, and we did such a. It was a good thing we did that turned into commercial. So what we did was we as part of that tie-in, we also signed a deal with the Red Sox, okay? Because Shonda Schilling, Justin, you probably don't know this because of your age, but Kurt Schilling, the big pitcher, great pitcher, Hall of Fame with the Red Sox, his wife Shonda had skin cancer. Guess
I
what?
do remember that.
Okay. The dermatologist said to her, you only use Blue Lizard. She became we didn't have to pay for that. And
I know Kurt, by the way.
do you really?
I really
Fabulous guy, even though I'm a diehard Yankee fan and Red Sox, we had fun with that. So all of a sudden she endorsed us, and we got involved with her various activities. But here's what we did with Moffitt and some of these other hospitals at the JetBlue Park, which is a spring training here in Fort Myers for the Red Sox, and at Fenway Park in Boston, we actually did cancer screenings, okay, with these hospitals. They came, they brought their apparatus, did the cancer screening, and we handed out blue lizard samples, okay, and information, and in fact had billboards and signage in the park. That was kind of new to me then. That those kinds of people talk grassroots, but that's a real example of the grassroots that worked. And after the cancer screening, we would find inevitably two people at each of these screenings that had to go back. And I would get notes thanking me. It wasn't me, but for having that because they would have not had that done. So that was a good thing we did. But then, if I told you how much exposure from the local newspapers who came and then interviewed me, and then the samples and on and on and on, and you don't think that the JetBlue Park, every CVS and Walgreens in that area had displays of blue lizard. Okay, so we took a basic fundamental. Okay, I didn't have to pay millions of dollars of advertising. I spent the money in a more frugal but more targeted fashion.
Well, and not only that, but this gets back to again another lesson we try to teach. So this is great to hear these stories so that our listeners can kind of hear them and come to life. Everything that you just talked about also comes back to understanding who your brand is. You knew exactly what the origin story was, and you stayed authentic to what the Blue Lizard brand is about, who they are, and why they're different. So every single extension that you did was a unified experience. There's nothing inorganic about it. There was nothing selling about it. This is who we are, so we're going to experientially do it this way, and then we're going to do it this way, and we're going to do it that way.
Yeah, it wasn't
every
fake.
single, I'll call customer, whether it was coming in through cancer screening or someone through a dermatologist, they all had the same experience through their personal exposure to it. But it was all the same experience because you knew exactly who you were, why you were here, and what you were trying to accomplish. And you just found new and different ways to do that. But every customer shared in a very similar story, which then allows it to scale. That's a very important fact.
Yes.
Now, by the way, Tony, I'll share with you, Kurt is actually a French bulldog fanatic.
Really?
Yes. So if you ever have a Zoom meeting with him, he was a bulldog on his lap.
I always, I always kid him. How did you do so well? I mean, you obviously married up with Shonda Schilling. What a great lady she is, and what a big supporter of the Blue Lizard brand. This is, and you guys know this better than I, that here we had a sponsorship that we didn't pay for. Okay,
Right.
it
She had a
just worked
passionate user.
beautiful. I mean, she would call and say, "Hey, Tony, in 3 weeks, they were living at that time. They had a place in Arizona. They were having a big function." She said, "Can you come?" And I said, "Yes. Not only can I come, but we're going to have samples and we're going to have all kinds of things and fun for the kids who come. We'll have lizards, okay, and we will do you well." And she appreciated that. So we did that, and then she would just do so much for the brand that you can't dimensionalize the impact that she had, okay, by doing some of the stuff that I'm
This is
referring to.
a real passionate user. Now, Tony, I want to ask something. You had involvement with the Got Milk campaign. How did that come about?
When you say the .com,
With didn't you do the Got Milk mustache commercials?
oh yeah, oh gee, now you're really going back. Oh boy, in commodity, so learned about a commodity business, the milk business.
Right, to uncommoditize something.
Yeah, what we did, again, you guys know this, all relationships. I was in Memphis, living in Memphis, and I get a phone call from a colleague, former colleague and friend, who was president of Maybelline. We own Maybelline in Shering Plow. That was one of our things. And Charlie Beach said, "Hey, Tony, can you come to Shanghai within the next 3 days?" I said, "What?" I said, he embarked, to make a long story short, upon worked out a deal with the Ministry of Agriculture in China. They were moving to pasteurized processed milk. And he said, "Look," he says, "I'm a sales guy. You're a marketing guy. I need your help big time." So I wound up going there a few weeks later, sized up the situation. I said, Charlie, I said, you're in a real, this commodity business. You have milk plants. There were three of them that they owned. Okay. And I said, you're not going to make any money doing this. So we talked about it, and the strategy we used was a branding strategy, and we signed the first Warner Brother license in mainland China, Looney Tunes. So we, in fact, developed a line of Looney Tune products for the Chinese consumer. So we had Bugs Bunny on vanilla milk. We had Tasmanian Devil on chocolate milk. You guys know the positioning and how to tie in with the brands.
Mm-hmm.
Tweety Bird and orange is a big flavor. So the flavor profile was creamsicle for the orange, and we launched those products. So what happened was we turned a commodity business to a branded business, and in fact was successful. So Charlie said to me, he says, "Hey, let's do that in the States now. Let's take that." So this gets to your question. So what we did was we then took that concept, the Looney Tunes flavored milk, we brought it into the States, and we tied into that whole concept of the mustache, quality control, and how to brand. See, this was the concept of taking a commodity to a brand, licensing and the mustache and doing things that all of a sudden people looked at as not just this is just white milk or this is cream and that kind of stuff. And we were very successful, I should add, by taking a major. That's probably the most commodity business I've heard of or know of, that we were able to take a segment and make it a more of a branded business.
Tony, what would you, before we wrap up here, our audience they're the entrepreneurial challenger brands. What kind of advice would you give to them if you had like three things you wanted to tell them to either do or to look out for or to not do? What would you tell them?
It's funny you say that. Last night I was at the university and with the entrepreneurial class, and we were talking about some of these same things. And you hear young, these are seniors graduating this year, and all of them, they're going to be entrepreneurs and they're going to be presidents and owners, and they don't know what they don't know. So I pretty much giving them some of the advice was, number one, I said, make sure when you go into something, you have your eyes open. Entrepreneurs tend to be glossy eyed, and what they're going into has no wrong, and it's going to be a success at the 100% level. Okay. Look at it that maybe that there's going to be a 50% success rate. And what do you do on the 50% versus 100%? So, number one is look at that risk reward profile from a more realistic standpoint. Number two, as I told them, is whatever the budget that you put together, just say that it's going to be low by 25 to 50%, and you're going to have a cash flow issue that you never thought about. And just be prepared what you do when that happens. Not if that happens, but when that happens. And then last but not least, or the third one, there's a lot of them, but the third one is have an exit strategy. Let's talk exit strategy on the positive. 3 years, you buy it, you develop this product, and you get it to a standpoint that it has a $1 million sales plus level and current levels of and a good EBITDA and good cash flow. So you sell it for $2.5 million. So have that exit strategy in mind. Don't just have ad infinitum. You're going to keep this going because it's going to have a 10, 15, 20 million. Know what that is. And then on the downside, if it doesn't meet your expectations in that 1, 2, 3 year time frame, what is your exit strategy there so that you minimize your out of pocket cost and your downside risk? Because guess what? You only have so many friends and family that you can go back to and ask for more money, because that's what you're going to be doing. That's what you're telling me. You're getting this startup money. So those are kind of three of the things. I could go on probably, but those are the three big ones that I shared with them last night. It was funny because I had them look at me like, why? You know what? I'm going to be successful. I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to be. I'm rooting for you, but Go through this thought process. Do yourself a favor by doing it. You'll never regret it.
I have to tell you, I sometimes get a kick out of the exuberance of youth with entrepreneurs in the CPG business. This isn't everybody, but you run into them. And we're going to change the way that retail is run in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so your bar of soap is going to get Walmart to change the way they run their company.
Yeah.
Good
Yes.
luck with that one.
Yes. Yes.
There is an algorithm to what we do.
Yeah.
And you will figure out, you can be innovative and you can do, unique things, but you need to figure out how to work within the construct of how this world lives, because it's enormous. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. And we've talked about Walmart with 148,000 SKUs. They can live without any one of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're still, at the end of the day, you're still going to play the game by their rule book.
Yes.
Yep.
Tony, it has been fabulous having you. This has been fun, hasn't
It
it?
has been fun.
Justin, it hasn't just been fun to hear these stories. It's been great. So I hope Tony comes back. Tony, do you have any social media or anything that you kind of let people follow you or anything?
You know what? Again, recently selling our shampoo business. I am at a point. I'm doing mentoring at the university, teaching at the university. I will entertain some selective, and I do operative word selective consulting. I don't have any at this point. My wife says, don't mess around with it. If they want to reach me, they can reach me through you guys or through my email. And I guess I want to conclude, thanking you guys for the opportunity. I've enjoyed this. It's fun sharing these experiences. And I want to kind of give you guys a plug. I've been privileged of working with many well-known large and mid-sized advertising agencies. And I will tell you, you guys are best. And I say this from personal experience, having worked with you guys. You guys are best in class. There's no one who knows CPG marketing better than you guys, strategic planning, and most importantly for your viewers who need to launch, whether it's a mature, growing brand or declining brand, or just a startup new. You guys are the best at doing that, and I'm just really and friends, by the way, which is icing on the cake. So again, you guys are terrific, and keep up the great work.
That is so kind of you. I'm honored by that, because Tony really knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're going to wrap up. We'll put Tony's info in the show notes. So, folks, if you like today's show, make sure you leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're not subscribed to the show, subscribe to it. Our new book, what are we looking at now? Maybe February?
I think
For
it's
the new book rollout?
I think it may be around February and on the late end.
Yep. So I'll remind people the new book's going to be coming out. Tony, I'm going to send you a copy of this. We've put a whole new book together, the 27 Unbreakable Rules of Retail.
Love it. Love
We
it.
literally took the entire brick and mortar business and we broke it into rule by rule by rule.
Nice.
And if you follow it, you'll be
Yep.
successful.
I'm sure. Well,
And if you
guys
break
are
the
best.
rules, you'll probably fail.
Yeah, you guys are
It's-
the best, like I said.
I
Good
appreciate
talking to you
that.
guys. If I don't
That's
speak
it.
to you, happy Thanksgiving. And
Same to you,
again,
friend.
you guys ever in the area, you don't need an invitation. Come see us. We'll break bread, okay?
I'll be down there soon. Folks,
Super.
that's it for today. We'll see you on the next episode of CPG Insiders. If you're looking to greatly increase sales on your CPG product, don't hesitate to contact us at Jekyll and Hyde Advertising and Marketing. By the way, the only advertising agency with a guaranteed result. Just go to jekyllhydeagency.com or feel free to give us a call at 800-500-4210.